I took care of Harvey Lewis for 3 years after he lost his sight. The first thing he did when he regained his vision was propose to Diana Chase, the fiancée who had once humiliated him. I thought he'd simply mistaken her for someone else. Until I overheard his conversation with a friend at a party. "Harvey, did you know it was the maid who's been taking care of you all these years?" "I know." "Then why?" Harvey's tone was casual, almost indifferent. "Have you ever heard the saying? What? The first thing a blind man does when he regains his sight is throw away his cane. She's seen me at my worst, witnessed all my failures. That's why she can only ever be the cane I throw away." I stood silently at the door, never stepping inside. Instead, I turned around, handed in my resignation, and boarded a southbound train with nothing but my savings and the weight of 3 lost years. "Are you sure you want to resign?" Mrs. Lewis, Harvey's mother, looked down at the resignation letter on the table, her expression thoughtful. Clearly, she hadn't expected that in less than half a month, the woman who had once loved her son so deeply would suddenly decide to leave. But there was nothing surprising about it. When love is gone, clinging to it is nothing but futile. I didn't want to lose myself over a man who no longer cared. Standing before her, I nodded. Seeing her silent, I added, "I'm not getting any younger. My parents have been urging me to go home and visit them, and they're hoping I'll settle down and get married soon." Of course, it was all a lie. My parents had passed away 3 years ago, and the so-called home was nothing more than an abandoned, crumbling cabin no one lived in anymore. Mrs. Lewis glanced at me, my faded clothes, my worn-out appearance, and perhaps guilt crept into her heart. She sighed softly. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out a check. "This is $200,000. Think of it as a token of my appreciation. Thank you for taking care of my son." I stared at the check, knowing I had no reason to refuse. She called it a gesture of gratitude. But we both knew the truth. This money was meant to sever the last tie between Harvey and me. The moment I accepted it, there would be nothing left to connect us. I was born in a forgotten little town in the American South, tucked between dense pine forests and endless stretches of wilderness. The town was so small it didn't even make it onto most maps. Just a few rundown houses, dusty dirt roads, and thick woods closing in from 3 sides. The only way out was an old gravel road that kicked up clouds of red dust whenever a car passed. Though that didn't happen often. There was no school in our town. To get an education, you had to ride a creaky old school bus, rattling over 15 miles of bumpy roads to the nearest town. In our family, money was as scarce as rain in August. There were 3 of us kids, but just enough to scrape by for one to attend school. I wasn't the eldest, so I didn't carry the weight of the family's hopes. I wasn't the youngest either, spared and spoiled with extra affection. I was the overlooked middle child, the one easiest to let go. In 8th grade, our class participated in a pen pal program with students from a big city up north. That letter felt like a tiny window to the outside world. I poured all my curiosity and longing into it, filling 2 whole pages with cramped handwriting, brimming with questions. Are there really cars that can carry people for hundreds of miles? Do city kids have to walk as far as we do just to get to school? I never expected a reply. My cousin had spent some time in Atlanta, and she claimed city folks didn't care about kids like me from the sticks. They carried themselves with an air of superiority, looking down on anyone with dust on their shoes. But a month later, a letter arrived. The envelope was crisp and clean, the handwriting neat and precise. Every one of my questions had been answered with patient detail. At the bottom was a simple signature. Harvey. Harvey. I whispered that name over and over, etching it into my heart. In class, I'd scribble it in the corners of my notebook, savoring the way it flowed, soft and rhythmic, like a stream slipping over smooth stones. That letter wasn't the last. We kept writing, sharing glimpses of our lives. He told me he was 2 years older, loved basketball and dogs, and hated practicing penmanship, which I found funny because his handwriting was always flawless. By the time I finished middle school, things at home had gotten worse. My parents decided only one of us could go to high school. To keep it fair, they'd draw lots. But as the middle child, I wasn't even given a chance to draw. I didn't protest. I just buried my face in a thin pillow and cried quietly. With no one to turn to, I poured all my heartbreak into a letter to Harvey. By then, I'd resigned myself to the idea of becoming a housemaid. Another forgotten dream buried beneath the weight of reality. But then a miracle happened. My teacher told me someone had offered to sponsor my high school education. I cried with joy, naively believing I'd been blessed by a kind stranger. Years later, when I was in college, I finally gathered the courage to ask my teacher who that generous person was. She smiled softly and said, almost like it was nothing, "It was Harvey." I froze. My heart pounded like it was trying to escape my chest. Harvey, the boy who talked to me about basketball, dogs, and answered all my childish questions, wasn't just a pen pal. He was the person who'd quietly changed the course of my life. When it came time to choose a university, I didn't hesitate. I applied to the one closest to Harvey's hometown. I told myself it was for better opportunities, for convenience. But deep down I just wanted to find him. To tell him face to face, thank you. To let him know that his letters didn't just answer questions about the world. They saved a lonely, forgotten soul. Young hearts are easily stirred. As I exchanged letters with Harvey, my feelings for him grew alongside an overwhelming curiosity. What did he look like? I had imagined it countless times. The face behind the patient words, the boy who funded my education. Though only 2 years older, his letters carried a maturity that often felt beyond his age, though traces of youthful stubbornness peeked through in small, endearing ways. When I finally followed the address on one of his letters and found his home, nothing was as I had imagined. First, Harvey's family was wealthy, far wealthier than I had ever pictured. Second, Harvey had lost his sight in an accident. The timeline fit perfectly. It was during my senior year of high school, right when his letters had suddenly stopped. After the accident, Harvey spiraled, moody, volatile, and cloaked in darkness. He locked himself in his room, smashing things whenever his temper flared. At first, his mother, Mrs. Lewis, visited him every day. But even the deepest affection wears thin over time. His father, busy with children from other affairs, looked at Harvey's despair with growing indifference, as if contemplating whether to abandon him altogether. Eventually, Mrs. Lewis stopped coming. The household staff grew lazy, avoiding him altogether. Harvey's temper had become too unpredictable, too exhausting. Bit by bit he was left behind, a discarded pawn. When I found out, I was furious. Seeing him like that, broken, abandoned, filled me with both sadness and rage. I started going to his house every day. I cleaned, cooked, and tended to his needs with gentle patience, coaxing him little by little out of his darkness. Mrs. Lewis, seeing that my care for Harvey was genuine, and perhaps knowing I was fresh out of college with no stable income, hired me as Harvey's personal maid. At first, Harvey resented my presence. He tried to scare me off, playing cruel tricks, testing my patience, hoping to drive me away. But I didn't leave. I grew bolder with every setback, refusing to be frightened off. Then came that stormy day. The sky roared with thunder, rain lashing against the windows. I was late getting to his house, delayed by the wind and the flooded roads. Alone in the dark. The booming thunder dragged Harvey back to the memory of the accident that had stolen his sight. Terrified, he curled into a corner, trembling. When I finally found him, his face was ashen, his expression lost, like a stray puppy searching for home. I wrapped my arms around him, softly humming the lullaby my mother used to sing to my little sister. After that day, Harvey never pushed me away again. And so I stayed. For 3 years I poured my heart into caring for him. Harvey slowly regained his confidence and his vision began to improve. 3 years of shared days, quiet companionship, and unspoken understanding. And with that, the feelings I'd tucked away since my youth blossomed. I even started to imagine a future with him. One evening, just before his vision returned, he stared blankly in my direction, his cloudy eyes filled with a fragile kind of hope. His voice was soft, tinged with a vulnerability easy to miss. "When my eyes heal, will you marry me?" There was a subtle plea in his tone, a quiet desperation, laced with a fragile thread of hope. I looked at him, at the face no one could ever refuse, and I nodded without even thinking. Harvey laughed, sweeping me into his arms, spinning me around on the grass, his joy infectious. Later he did propose. But not to me. The day Harvey had his bandages removed after surgery, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep on the bus. When I finally woke up, I realized I'd missed my stop. I hailed a cab and rushed to the hospital, my heart pounding with anticipation, only to find Harvey beaming as he embraced Diana. He tenderly brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, his eyes filled with warmth. Then, he pulled out the diamond ring he'd probably been holding onto for a while and proposed with heartfelt sincerity. "Thank you for taking care of me so selflessly these past 3 years." Diana's face flashed with shock for a brief moment before she covered it with her hands. Only she knew whether that expression was bashful joy, or the thrill of getting away with a lie. "I knew he'd mistaken her for me." Just as I was about to step forward and explain, Mrs. Lewis stopped me, motioning for me to follow her outside the room. Out in the hallway she got straight to the point. "Sherry, you must realize you and Harvey come from completely different worlds. If it hadn't been for his accident, you two never would have crossed paths." I wanted to argue, to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. Because she was right. If Harvey had never gone blind, our lives never would have intertwined. Mrs. Lewis continued, her tone calm but cutting. "Of course, I'm not someone who enjoys breaking people apart. If Harvey realizes before the wedding that you're the woman he truly loves, I won't stand in the way. But if he doesn't, then perhaps it's just not meant to be. After all, you know as well as I do, given Harvey's current situation, he needs someone who matches his social standing, someone who can strengthen his position." Her words left no room for protest. I glanced back at the hospital room at Harvey and Diana, their faces glowing with happiness, looking every bit the perfect match. My chest ached. "Why, Harvey, after 3 years, can't you recognize my voice? Do you still not know my name? I've told you more times than I can count. I'm Sherry Smith. Can't you remember that? You could have mistaken anyone else. But why her? I'll never forget the first time I saw you, Harvey. You were sprawled on the ground, desperately feeling around for your fallen sunglasses. And Diana, she crushed them under her heel, towering over you with that smug grin. Look at you, Harvey. You're nothing more than a dog groveling at my feet. And now a blind dog at that. You really thought you were good enough to marry me? You lost your dignity that day, humiliated in front of everyone. In the end, all it took was a little pout, a few tears from Diana to her family, and she marched straight to your house to break off the engagement. Mr. Lewis had already decided to give up on you." Mrs. Lewis's face darkened with shame, but even she had no choice but to swallow her pride. "Have you forgotten all of that, Harvey?" When Mrs. Lewis and I returned to the hospital room, Diana had already accepted Harvey's proposal. She looked at me with smug satisfaction, her chin slightly raised as if she'd just claimed victory. "Go peel me an apple," she commanded, her voice dripping with arrogance. It wasn't about the apple. It was a declaration. "Look at me. No matter how hard you tried, Harvey loves me." A wave of sadness and fury crashed over me. For a brief moment I wanted to turn around and run. But then Harvey's voice cut through the fog of my thoughts. "And who's this?" he asked, glancing in my direction with a puzzled look. Mrs. Lewis didn't miss a beat. "She's the personal maid I hired for you. Very diligent and responsible." Harvey nodded slightly, no suspicion in his eyes. "Since you're the maid and Diana wants an apple, go peel one for her." Just like that. As if I were nothing more than a stranger in his life. A nameless servant. As if the past 3 years had been nothing but a figment of my imagination. I stood frozen for a moment, then slowly picked up an apple and a knife from the bedside table. My fingers trembled slightly as I began to peel. Diana watched me with smug delight, her voice turning sweet and syrupy as she leaned toward Harvey, giggling softly. Harvey gazed at her with warmth in his eyes, his smile gentle and full of affection. That look, it was unfamiliar and devastating. When I finished peeling the apple, I handed it to Diana. She scrunched up her nose, inspecting the apple with thinly veiled disgust. "Harvey," she whined, "have her put on gloves and peel another one. I don't want to eat something her dirty hands have touched." Harvey, eager to please her, didn't hesitate. His face darkened slightly as he turned to me. "Can't you handle something as simple as peeling an apple properly?" I bit the inside of my cheek, fighting back the sting in my eyes. I nodded, my voice catching slightly. "I'm sorry, Miss Chase. I'll redo it." I put on gloves and peeled another apple, trying to steady my shaking hands. But when I handed it to her, she pouted again. "The peel is uneven. I don't eat apples with broken peels." So I picked up another apple. And another. Each time she found a new reason to reject it. Too thick, too thin, not shiny enough. By the time I'd gone through every apple in the room, my hands were numb, my heart even more so. Finally, Diana stretched lazily and sighed. Forget it. I don't really feel like eating an apple anymore. I clenched my jaw so tightly I thought I might crack a tooth. I knew exactly why she was doing this. It was because of Harvey. Back when she'd humiliated him, I was the one who stood up for him time and time again, exposing her cruelty. Now that Harvey had his sight back, and with it his value in the family business, Diana wanted to reclaim him. But I was in the way. The woman who had truly been by his side for 3 years, the one who'd picked him up piece by piece when no one else cared, was nothing more than an obstacle in her path. After Harvey was discharged from the hospital, the Chase family wasted no time. They met with Mrs. Lewis to finalize the wedding arrangements. The date was set for a weekend just 2 weeks away. 2 weeks. That was all the time I had left. The truth was, I didn't want to give up on him. But what I didn't realize was, Harvey had given up on me long before I even knew it. At Harvey's engagement party, one of his friends kept shifting uncomfortably, clearly debating whether to speak up. But guilt has a way of gnawing at a person, and eventually, it won. Harvey, his friend said hesitantly, glancing around before leaning in, you do know it was your personal maid Sherry who's been taking care of you all these years, right? Harvey swirled the wine in his glass, unbothered. I know. Then why? Harvey's tone was light, almost indifferent. Have you ever heard the saying? His friend looked puzzled. What saying? The first thing a blind man does when he regains his sight is throw away his cane. She saw me at my lowest, my weakness, my failures. That's all she'll ever be, a cane I no longer need. I was standing just outside the door when I heard it. For a moment I thought my legs might give out. Sadness surged through me, sharp and suffocating. The man I had adored for years, the one I thought I'd saved, had become the very knife carving wounds into my heart. I stood there for what felt like forever, long enough for my legs to go numb, my heart even more so. Staring at Harvey from afar, I felt something inside me shift. An invisible line dividing the man I had loved from the man standing in that room. Maybe my Harvey had died the year I first met him. I didn't stay for the party. I turned around, walked away, and handed Mrs. Lewis my resignation letter. I didn't have much to pack. Just a single suitcase, everything I owned stuffed inside. I lied to Mrs. Lewis. This time I wasn't going back home. There was nothing to return to. My parents had been gone for years, and my childhood friends had long scattered, chasing lives of their own. I didn't know where I was going. I opened my phone, picked a random train heading south, and bought a ticket. Maybe I just wanted to see what the world looked like beyond the ruins of my heartbreak. When the train finally arrived, I stepped off and turned back for one last look at the city I was leaving behind. It looked the same as the day I arrived. But I wasn't. Some people come into your life like fleeting shadows. Brief, weightless, destined to fade. In the end, no matter how tightly you hold on, they'll slip through your fingers, lost to the endless sea of faces. The train kept heading south. I didn't know where I was going, so I decided I'd get off wherever the train decided to stop. My first stop was Ruston. The sky here was unbelievably blue, the flowers vibrant and full of life. I tried to heal, piece by piece, smoothing over the scars left behind. But the harder you try to forget something, the more it clings to you. One day I received a video from an unfamiliar number. It was Harvey. He looked different, more disheveled, with a shadow of exhaustion etched into his face. In the video, one of his friends was half joking, half serious as he spoke. Your maid's gone. Why don't you go apologize? Just say you were joking. Harvey was silent for a moment, then gave a lazy smirk, swirling the wine in his glass. I wasn't joking. What's there to explain? Besides, why should I apologize? She's the one who left without a word. Where's the sense of responsibility in that? And who knows, maybe she's just playing hard to get. His friend laughed, eager to agree. Yeah, she liked you so much. I bet she'll come crawling back in a few days. I mean, look how she cared for you when you were blind, like she couldn't live without you. Harvey chuckled softly. Then, with an almost careless shrug, he added, even if she's dead, I wouldn't go looking for her. The video ended with Diana running into his arms, her laughter ringing in the background. I stared at my screen, frozen, feeling as if someone had poured ice water over my entire body. But the coldest part wasn't my skin, it was my heart. Even if she's dead, I wouldn't go looking for her. The man I had loved for 3 years, the man I had cared for through every dark and broken moment, I had never truly known him at all. Maybe he'd never shown me who he really was. Maybe I was just a fool spinning in circles. A clown in a show I didn't even realize I was part of. I knew this was Diana's doing. She wanted to gloat. To say, see? Even when Harvey knows the truth, he still chooses me. You were never anyone to him. I deleted the video without a word. Then I sat quietly by the river, letting the evening breeze brush against my face. Staring at the still water, my heart heavy, I wondered how to let go of someone I couldn't forget. But I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I stood up, trying to shake off the ache in my chest, and began walking along the lakeside, hoping the movement would clear my mind. Suddenly, someone yanked me back with such force that I stumbled and fell hard onto the ground. "Don't do it," a voice shouted above me. I blinked, startled, and looked up into the face of a young man. His black hair fell messily over his fair forehead, and his emerald green eyes, sharp and vivid, were filled with genuine concern. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his gaze scanning me for injuries. I pushed myself up, brushing the dirt off my clothes. "I'm fine." He didn't seem convinced. "If you're feeling overwhelmed, you can talk to me. Don't do anything drastic, okay?" It took me a second to realize what he meant. I shook my head quickly. "Wait. No, I wasn't trying to jump into the river." His words caught in his throat and his face flushed bright red. "Oh, I'm sorry. But, I saw you standing there alone and..." I watched him stammer, his embarrassment making him fumble even more. "It's okay," I said with a small smile, amused despite myself. As I turned to leave, he hesitated, then awkwardly pulled out his phone and held it out to me. Can I have your number?" I raised an eyebrow. His face turned an even deeper shade of red. "Not like that. I'm worried. In case you, try again." I stared at him for a moment, then sighed, trying not to laugh. "I told you, I wasn't trying to kill myself." He scratched the back of his neck, clearly flustered. Right. Sorry. I didn't mean that. He couldn't even finish his sentence, stumbling over his words, his face now a brilliant crimson. There was something ridiculously endearing about it. I tilted my head, teasing, "Oh, I get it. You like me, don't you?" His eyes widened in horror. "No. Not like that. Watching him stammer and fumble, cheeks burning, made something inside me ease. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel heavy. In the end, we exchanged numbers and names. His name was Jacob. A college student. He lived nearby and liked to go for night runs. It just so happened that tonight, on one of those runs, he saw me standing alone by the water and, in a panic, thought he was saving me from myself. After spending some time in Ruston, Jacob and I grew closer. What started as light teasing and casual jokes slowly revealed something deeper. I realized Jacob genuinely liked me. But we never acknowledged it. That fragile, unspoken thing sat between us like glass, thin and clear, just waiting to shatter. Friends often say the best way to forget an old, broken love is to start a new, healthy one. But it's not that simple. 3 years with Harvey wasn't a fleeting affair. Not 3 weeks, not 3 days. It was years of my life stitched into his, thread by thread. I started to distance myself from Jacob, hoping he'd get the hint and walk away. But he didn't. I've never been someone who enjoys a restless life. After a while, I realized Ruston suited me just fine. The town's quiet charm wrapped around me like a soft blanket. So I rented a small shop and opened a flower store, Blissful Blooms. Jacob, now in his senior year of college, insisted on helping out at the shop, claiming it was for work-study. I glanced at the luxury watch on his wrist more than once, but never bothered to call him out. Days passed quietly like petals falling, soft, unnoticed, peaceful, until the phone rang one afternoon, breaking the fragile calm I'd built around myself. I was sorting orders, cradling the phone between my shoulder and ear. "Hello, this is Blissful Blooms. How can I help you?" We were low on roses, with lilies and daisies dwindling too. I mentally noted to restock soon. But the line remained silent. I waited, patient as ever. "Hello? Are you looking to place an order?" All I could hear was faint, steady breathing. Just as I was about to hang up, thinking it was some prank, Sherry. That voice. It hit me like a punch to the chest. Harvey. It had been nearly 3 months since I'd left his house. 3 months since I'd heard that voice. My pen froze mid-scribble. I swallowed hard, forcing my heart back into place. My voice was steady when I spoke, sharp edges hidden beneath polite indifference. Is this Mr. Lewis? What brings someone so important to call someone as insignificant as a maid? His breath hitched. I could almost hear it. His voice, rough and quieter now, carried an unfamiliar weight. Did you really quit? I heard from my mother you went back home, to get married soon. Kept my tone light, unaffected. That's right. There was a pause. Then, softer, almost like a confession, I went to your hometown. You weren't there. I wasn't there because that home never existed. But I didn't say that. His words sounded small, fragile even, so different from the Harvey I remembered at the party or the one Diana had flaunted in that cruel video. Back then he was arrogant. Certain I'd come crawling back. He'd been so sure. Sherry would never leave. He loves me too much. But 3 months had passed. No calls. No notes. No desperate apologies. And now he was unraveling. I stayed silent, letting the weight of his words hang between us. If you don't have any real reason for calling Mr. Lewis, I'll hang up now. His composure cracked, irritation seeping through. I'm getting married next week. You'll come to the wedding, won't you? My breath hitched, a sharp sting in my chest. What is this? Final jab? An invitation or an insult? For a fleeting second, I felt the old ache, but then, nothing. Just emptiness. Harvey wasn't worth it anymore. I didn't even have to fake my next words. Sorry, I can't make it. Why not? His voice quickened, a trace of panic. I smiled even though he couldn't see it. Because I'm getting married too. Then I hung up. A deep breath followed. The heaviness I'd carried for so long, gone. Like exhaling after holding it in for far too long. That's when the shop's bell chimed. I turned and there was Jacob standing in the doorway, sunlight framing him like some accidental masterpiece. He held a bouquet of roses. Wearing a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up casually. My heart skipped. I thought I'd never feel this again. After Harvey, I'd convinced myself love wasn't for me. Not real love, not the kind that doesn't hurt. But maybe I'd underestimated myself. We meet so many people in this life. Why waste forever mourning the wrong ones? Jacob, oblivious to the storm inside me, walked in like he always did, assuming I wouldn't accept his flowers. So, as usual, he placed them neatly in a vase, changing the water with meticulous care. But this time, I stepped forward. I plucked a single rose from the bouquet, twirling it between my fingers before looking up at him with a soft smile. Jacob, I said, my heart lighter than it had been in years, let's give this a try. The flower shop was closed that day. Jacob practically dragged me out of bed, his energy a stark contrast to my groggy reluctance. Today was our first official date since we started dating, and Jacob was taking it seriously, so seriously in fact that he'd gone out of his way to dress up. Standing in front of the mirror, he admired himself with exaggerated confidence. His arms wrapped lazily around my waist. Sherry, can I kiss you? He asked, grinning at his reflection and then at me. I covered my mouth, mumbling, I haven't brushed my teeth. No. Undeterred, he nuzzled the back of my hand, refusing to let me off the hook. Then tell me, do you like me? I sighed, trapped by his persistence, and nodded. Yes. I like you. A lot. Only then did he finally release me, satisfied with my answer. At the amusement park, Jacob held my hand tightly, studying the map with the focus of someone planning an expedition. After a few rides, he insisted I sit and rest while he went to buy ice cream. I sat down, lazily flipping the park map in my hands, when a shadow suddenly fell over me. Smiling, I looked up, expecting to see Jacob. You're back already? That was fast. Our next ride should be the Ferris wheel. But the words died in my throat. It wasn't Jacob. It was Harvey. His face was unshaven, his appearance slightly disheveled, a far cry from the polished man I once knew. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up with something close to relief. My smile faded instantly. Harvey stepped forward as if to hug me, but I sidestepped, putting space between us. The surprise in his eyes was palpable. He had never expected me, the girl who once clung to his every word, to reject him. I glanced toward Jacob in the distance, who was juggling drinks and balloons with that familiar carefree smile, and instinctively moved to walk toward him. But Harvey reached out, grabbing my arm. His grip wasn't forceful, but there was desperation in his touch. "Please. Don't go," he whispered, his voice fragile, like he'd rehearsed this moment countless times. I didn't respond. Harvey continued, his words spilling out, "Sherry, I know I was wrong. I was blinded by ambition, by what I thought I needed. I thought Diana was the right choice, but I never loved her. I never even wanted her. It's always been you. Can't we go back to the way things were?" I looked into his eyes I once dreamed would hold this very regret. I used to imagine this scene, Harvey begging me to come back, filled with remorse. I thought I'd feel victorious, that it would heal the ache he'd left behind. But standing here I felt none of that. No satisfaction. No ache. Just emptiness. Maybe even a hint of amusement at how small he suddenly seemed. I gently pulled my arm from his grasp, my voice calm and steady. "Harvey, you were right all along, we were never the same. We come from different worlds. You're from a family of wealth and influence, and I'm just an ordinary girl with nothing to offer you but myself. I thought that was enough. I thought if I loved you hard enough I could bridge that gap. I was wrong. I was foolish to think we had a future." I took a deep breath, my heart surprisingly light. "But the thing is, Harvey, I've woken up from that dream." His face crumpled, eyes filling with panic as he shook his head, trying to stop my words like they physically hurt him. No, Sherry, that's not true. Don't say that." He reached for me again. But Jacob arrived just then, stepping beside me and gently taking my hand. He didn't say a word, didn't interfere, but his fingers intertwined with mine, grounding me. I squeezed his hand softly, then turned back to Harvey, offering a small smile, one filled with genuine warmth, but no trace of the girl who once ached for him. "Harvey, stop holding on to the past. We both deserve to move on." I reached into my bag and pulled out the check Mrs. Lewis had given me when I left. "I cared for you because I wanted to. Part of it was gratitude, part of it, something more. But this money was never mine to keep." I forced it into his hand, refusing to let him reject it. "Thank you for being a part of my life. You changed it in ways both good and bad. But I'm done now." I turned to Jacob, my heart steady and sure. "Let's go, sweetheart." Calling him that felt natural, easy even. Behind me I could feel Harvey deflate. Like all the air had been sucked from his lungs. But I didn't look back. Not this time. When we got home I told Jacob everything about the past 3 years with Harvey. I thought he'd be upset, maybe even angry. But he wasn't. Instead he just pulled me into a tight hug, his voice trembling, thick with emotion. I gently patted his head, noticing the redness around his eyes. "Are you crying?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Jacob quickly looked away, his expression awkward. "Who's crying?" The wind got in my eyes. I bit back a smile, trying to keep a straight face. But when he saw me holding in my laughter, he sighed in defeat. "Okay, fine," he admitted, his voice soft. He paused, then blurted out, "I'm just heartbroken for you. You had to go through all that with that jerk." His words hit me harder than I expected. Heartbroken for me. No one had ever said that to me before. Not Harvey. Not my family. Growing up in a household where survival was the priority, things like love and tenderness felt like luxuries we couldn't afford. My chest tightened, and before I knew it, my eyes filled with tears. Jacob panicked immediately, fumbling for tissues and dabbing at my face with all the grace of someone completely out of their depth. "Oh no, don't cry. Did I say something wrong?" "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you." His frantic, clumsy attempts to comfort me were so ridiculous that I burst out laughing through my tears. Seeing me laugh, Jacob relaxed and chuckled too, rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly. Later we lay in bed, his arms wrapped around me. Jacob, who usually fell asleep the moment his head hit the pillow, was wide awake. His uneven breathing and restless heartbeat making it impossible for me to sleep. I opened my eyes and whispered, "What's wrong?" His emerald eyes sparkled in the dim light, nervous yet filled with warmth. "Sherry," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, "you called me sweetheart today." I nodded slightly, not sure where this was going. His grip on me tightened, his words rushing out like he'd been holding them back for far too long. "Does that mean you've fully accepted me? I know we've moved fast and I don't want to pressure you, But I need to be honest, I love you. I've loved you since the moment I first saw you. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So, Sherry, will you marry me? I stared at him, my heart racing. I'd planned to tease him to say, I'll think about it. But when I opened my mouth, the words that came out were simple, clear, and certain. I will. And just like that, my heart found its home. On the day of our wedding, I was yanked out of bed at 8 a.m., pulled straight into the whirlwind of makeup artists, hairstylists, and layers of tulle and satin. Staring at my reflection, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Radiant, glowing, beautiful in a way that felt almost surreal. It was hard to believe she was me. Midway through the preparations, my phone buzzed. I picked it up without thinking. It was Harvey's friend. His voice was urgent, filled with panic. Sherry, where are you? Can you come over? Harvey's not doing well. He's on the verge of a breakdown. I froze, fingers tightening around the phone. For a moment I considered hanging up. But he sensed my hesitation and rushed to fill the silence, his words tumbling out in desperation. Did you know? Back in college, after a huge fight with his parents, they cut him off financially. But he still managed to send you money for your tuition. He worked 2 jobs, coding during the day, waiting tables at night. All for you. Sherry, he's always loved you. I'd always assumed Harvey's money came from his wealthy family. I never imagined there was more to the story. I stayed silent, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to feel. Sensing he'd struck a chord, Harvey's friend pushed further. Think about all the good he did for you. The sacrifices he made. Yes. Harvey had been good to me once. But if he loved me so much, how did he become the person who shattered my heart without a second thought? Maybe people just change. I glanced across the room and there was Jacob, standing tall in his wedding suit, a soft smile playing on his lips as he waited for me. This is my future. I took a breath, my voice steady and clear. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't be calling me. You should be looking for a therapist, for him. We're done. Whatever we had is over. Please don't contact me again. I ended the call, blocked the number, and shut off my phone. Today wasn't about Harvey. It was about me, about Jacob, about the life we were about to build together. With that, I stood tall, smoothed out my dress, and walked toward the man waiting for me, ready to embrace the most important day of my life.